Good afternoon. Welcome to our keynote panel discussion. So I would like to welcome Professor Renata Salek, Professor Monika Kostera, Dr. Joseph Rodroff Rimpong, and on Mondo, Felice, Gabriel, and Sonia. And on this panel, we would like to discuss the changes of the meaning of social exclusion, economic marginalization, cultural invisibility in times of macro-social and macroeconomic ruptures. As examples of such ruptures, we propose the following events of global importance. The first one is the COVID-19 pandemic, the resurfacing of classes, racial divisions in the context of work and healthcare. Second one is the apocalyptic futures of the climate change, the resurfacing of class predatory capitalism, and the third one is the return of nationalisms and far-right movements, the Polish case of non-LGBT zones. So each of the keynote speakers will have some time to discuss these three topics. So we'll switch, we'll give you the access so that you can have a turn and have a speech, and after that we'll have a discussion. So you will have you can refer to what you said, and you can exchange your opinions. Okay, so should we ask Professor Renata Salek?
Is it working?
Yes, we can see you. We can hear you. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I will address the issue of pandemic in particular. The first important issue is that this pandemic actually has not come as such a surprise. There has been, I think, a kind of a forgetting or even repression of the news, information, scientific data that we had for some time, that a pandemic of this proportion could happen. Already in the mid-90s, American journalist working in the domain of sciences, Laurie Garrett, published a book, The Coming Plague, in which she developed a very important theory that in the future we can expect pandemics of global proportions because of the all kinds of interventions that we were doing in nature. And she sort of spelled out what happened today. Now 4 years ago, another very important book was published. American epidemiologist Rob Wallace wrote a book entitled Big Farms Make Big Flu, with a very similar thesis, but looking more concretely into China, Africa, South America, and sort of his thesis was similar to Laurie Garrett's, that we are coming so close to some wild animals with the farms which are moving more and more into sort of like the periphery. His idea was that when big farms are taking over the land of the small farms are often sort of moving to the areas where the domestic animals are getting in touch with wild animals in forests, and viruses are transmitted in this way. And his analysis, another analysis, was also that, for example, in some African countries, these monocultures like production of palm oil is also sort of developing in areas of nature where viruses start being transmitted, and in regards to exploitation in South America, he's again looking at the problem of viruses with the cutting of rainforests and, also mining industry around the world and so on. So other problem has been that big countries like the United States, also UK, have also done quite a lot of sort of strategizing in the past decades. What would happen if a pandemic were to occur? So the United States, for example, did an exercise called Crimson Contagion, which showed that America is not prepared well for a future pandemic. However, the result of this exercise has been sort of like forgotten, pushed aside. So that's like an important problem of a kind of strategic ignorance in regard to pandemic, which we have observed in the last decade. Lindsay McGoey, a British sociologist, writes about strategic ignorance, and her idea is that quite often, people in higher echelons of powers, corporations, are using all kinds of strategies of keeping people in the unknown, or they are sort of pushing knowledge which is endangering profits sort of out of the sphere of public knowledge. So we have observed this kind of strategic ignorance at work in the last decades in regard to the pandemic. Now, another issue related to pandemic which I would like to address is sort of like a kind of a neoliberal logic that we are observing at this moment where we are in the midst of pandemic, which is sort of linked to the question of the value of life. We have, of course, observed huge discrepancies, class discrepancies in regard to, how people are coping with the pandemic, who has to work, who can work from home, who is essential worker, usually underpaid workers, or how the pandemic is especially endangering minorities, blacks in the United States and elsewhere, indigenous population, and especially people of lower class. However, in the domain of medicine, we are also kind of experiencing a sort of a neoliberal debate. Many countries have been faced with the terrible choices, who will be given ventilators, or how will hospitals cope with the patients. And here too, we have kind of seen a neoliberal ideology at work, where quite a lot of discussion has been about the value of life. Whom should we save? Two philosophies have been competing here. On the one hand, we have kind of the theory of egalitarianism, that every life is worth, and that there is no hierarchy between the value of life. Now, in regard to this philosophy, sometimes, when doctors would need to choose whom to give the ventilator or aspirator and whom not to, some ethicists would propose the ideas who comes first. Others would go even so far and envision would maybe some kind of a lottery solve these terrible choices. But more and more, a philosophy of utilitarianism is sort of kind of gaining prominence in this kind of terrible ethical debates. Now, utilitarianism is trying to figure out, how to save sort of the largest number of people, and on the one hand, and quite often also how to save sort of the largest numbers of years, kind of expected years of life of people. And here, debates start centering over, sort of like impossible choices. If, an older person and a younger person are both competing for the same machine, would, the younger person have the chance to get the machine because he or she has more, kind of a chance to have a longer future life. So that would be sort of one reasoning. Or, maybe that person has a better chance of survival as such. Still, another theory is trying to look at life going through sort of like kind of a spring, summer, autumn, and winter time. And the question is, should everyone has the right to kind of experience these different times? So should there be a value given, to the kind of the idea that a person did not go through kind of the whole circle, and that the choice in a way has to be kind of ridden with this kind of dilemmas. Now, still other reasonings are kind of trying to look at who is actually maybe more valuable for society. And here debates would be over, the question of whether a person is in some way replaceable or not. Let's say if we had to choose between a director of big company and a single father of 3 children, the kind of the theoretical ethical explanations would often kind of try to figure out, okay, father cannot be easily replaced, but a director maybe can. Now, these are often debates sort of like which we read about in sort of theoretical discussions in scientific articles on ethics, medicine, and triage. However, more and more these kind of debates are actually entering, sort of medical profession, and are opening a lot of anxieties, a lot of trauma for doctors who have to make decisions, which is why countries are trying to write out some kind of ethical codes of practice which might be of help to doctors who are choosing. Germany, for example, has been, propagating the idea that on top of looking at kind of medical condition of a person, we have to take into account that it should not be one doctor making a decision, but a consortium where, if possible, it should not be only doctors, but maybe, a person who is not necessarily a doctor, a nurse, a social worker, or something else. So quite often they are writing about the need to have 6 eyes present where important decisions are made. Now, we are quite often kind of forgetting the fact that people should have their own say in when these kind of decisions are made, and countries today are reopening discussions about the people giving advanced notices what they actually want or not. And many countries are also rethinking the right of a person also to choose the end of his or her life, which is why these traumatic discussions are kind of opened up with and at the time where a lot of people are kind of in anxiety state in regards to the future of their health. Now, I will not sort of end with any kind of a proposition. Primarily, I'm sort of like bringing to the table how, in a way, the neoliberal idea of the value of life can have, direct, in a way, consequences to the questions of who will get access and who will not get access to health equipment. And in the near future, we can experience very similar discussions in regard to the vaccines, who will have the access and not. And here, of course, class divides and the divides between rich countries and poor are something that we can expect.
Okay, so let's ask Professor Monika Kostera to join the discussion first.
Thank you for inviting me to the discussion. I'll try to say a few words about the topics that you suggested. First of all, I agree with the what has been said here several times and just a moment ago as well, but it wasn't like completely unforeseen what happened, the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, from the point of view of social phenomena, the economy and politics, this wasn't unexpected. It was another wave, or it is another wave of crisis sweeping all over the world. And 2019, I've been reading a few recently published books where the authors felt that something is coming this way, something is going to happen. Nobody knew exactly what, but something, well, a new crisis, maybe economic, maybe political, something was going to happen. And the world, the year 2020 began with, as we all, I think, can remember, with a threat of a world war. With the first month began, January began with news of a conflict between Iran and the United States, and that didn't bode well. But then there were rumors of a serious illness being spread by virus, and then came the lockdown in March. So this is from the sociological point of view, it is a crisis in the sense it's a moment of reflection, where a moment where we can learn how to choose another way. Because what is happening around us is not a response to the crisis. Many people are used to a kind of idea that capitalism generates crisis, but it also generates solutions. That it used to, or that was the narrative logic during the solid modern era, but it isn't anymore. Liquid modernity had put a stop to that narrative. So instead, it just generates crisis, and there are no real responses that remedy these crises. Only more of the same. And the most recent responses to what was going on since the financial crisis 2008 are outlined in the proposed themes for discussion, for the panel discussion. The apocalyptic future of climate change and the return of nationalism. These two huge, terrible developments are a sort of non-response to the past crisis. So we can not expect that this one will generate automatically a response that will really be able to help us go further and avoid a complete destruction of the planet. Instead, in order to prevent that, we really need to resist effectively and to organize and to find ways of not solving, because it's perhaps too monumental, too massive what is happening, but at least making it possible to go in a different direction, or as Edgar Morin entitled his most recent book, Changer la voie, change the path. But thank you.
Thank you very much. So maybe now we should ask Mondo Valley to join the discussion. Okay, so the first one was about the COVID-19 pandemics.
Yes.
Second one, the apocalyptic futures of the climate change. And number 3 was about the return of nationalism and far-right movements.
Well, I think that probably the first question is that okay, COVID is something new on this moment is happened, but is I think it belongs to a line of health problems that humanity have for a long time. So in this time, in this moment, we can say it's more global, like, well, probably is the society that we have in this moment is but I think that all these problems that items are similar in different moments of the human timeline. But well, I think that the first question, now we are working in a new book, and there is one critic of art and design that write some text speaking about this question of COVID, no? And she said that now we have a big problem because this situation provoked that the power of the different states don't let us spread so our energy and power in the streets, and another questions, not more problematic. But I think that, in my opinion, COVID is a health problem that must be solved for a global movement, no, and no for political global movement, but for the people that want to change these new problems. And well, in this sense, I want to speak about some question that I think that can not solve this problem, but we can focus and in one moment Ivan Illich speak about these problems, and he said that we need more tools of convivial relation. And he said that we spend more time making new tools, but really the question is not to make new technological tools, but we solve the relation between human beings. And he said that the public and private institutions and organizations must be work more unite in one sense. No, I will repeat, the human being solution, not for one country or for one group of person, is universal. And I think that there is too much question now on the table, like the identity, and for us is very relevant because we think that we need a new relationship with the world, because now we discover that we can feel different to the other persons in a sensible and personal form, not only with the gender, but the experience, no, without to consider your country, the place when you was born, the gender was that people thinks that you have, and well, the question important in this case is how artists, designers can show this or make visible this question in a critical sense. No, during a lot of time, the last months, all designers and artists and made a lot of images about, for example, COVID, but or the question to stay at home, etc. But for me, sometimes I don't understand this more far away that the free expression or sensibility, personal sensibility, but I don't find any more controversial or political position in order to change and control this government power that make this, well, that I don't know this exactly the word, that don't make us to be more free than another occasion. No, I think that we live in the most modern civilization, in the best moment on the history, but the problems probably are the same, and in conceptual sense are similar. No, well, I think that is the hard problem, how to solve this. And well, I don't have the solution, no. And this last year we published a book where the title was Ethics for Survivors and Aliens, and we think that sometimes probably creative people seems or have the perception that are survivors of all the problems, and aliens in confrontation with a person that we don't understand what happened, what think, no. And well, I think that this is the we need an ethics, but the question is, we are survivors, or really we can live in this state of things in a natural form, no only like survivors, or we need to live no like aliens, but with a good relationship with all the people in our places, I say countries, or in the world, no, in the whole thing.
Okay, so Dr. Rodroff Rimpong, can you try to connect one more time? Dr. Rodroff Rimpong wrote his comments. I will read them now. So he wrote, I will limit my contribution to the COVID-19 pandemic and how it exposes certain inequalities associated with part of a social class. First of all, the issue of social distancing that was enforced by the government meant that people living in homes with certain amenities that allowed people to walk around their compound, if such environs became uncomfortable for whatever reason, However, millions of Ghanaians do not live in such residences, for example, bungalows. This situation caused certain segmentation of the Ghanaian society to rebel against the lockdown, as it is related being part of a certain class, for example, middle class. In terms of healthcare services, new reports indicated that whereas major hospitals were reported to be full, there were certain posh hospitals that catered only to the elite and did not accept seeing ordinary Ghanaians. So in the Ghanaian case, we witnessed how COVID-19 brought to the force the issue of class, as it is related to how to adhere to social distancing rules and inequalities associated with healthcare. So I will be interested to hear from fellow panelists the specific cases from their countries. Okay, thank you very much for the comment. And now, so maybe should we ask now Professor Monica Costera for further comments?
I have no further comments. There is a terrible echo in the background.
Oh, okay.
Makes it really hard to.
Okay. Apologies for that. So we have technical issues.
I'll just say thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your willingness.
Fascinating conference. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your contribution. So thank you all. Thank you to you for your participation in this conference. Thank you to all keynote speakers for their comments. And please join us tomorrow. We start at 9:50 with the last keynote speaker, Dr. Joseph Rodroff Rimpong. Okay, so can we ask Dr. Joseph Rodroff Rimpong to stay with us so that we can check technical problems? I mean, we can somehow try to figure out what's going on with your computer.